I then turned and looked at the dark and foreboding door, over which was written, "The Judgment Seat of Christ." Just as warmth and peace had flooded my soul each time I looked at the great treasures of salvation, fear and insecurity gripped me when I looked at this door. Now it seemed that everything in me wanted to stay in this room, and nothing in me wanted to go through that door. Again the eagle answered my thoughts. Before you enter the door to any great truth, you will have these same feelings. You even felt them when you entered into this room filled with the treasures of salvation. These fears are the result of the fall. They are the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge from that tree made us all insecure and self-centered. The knowledge of good and evil makes the true knowledge of God seem fearsome, when in fact every truth from God leads to an even greater peace and security. Even the judgments of God are to be desired, because all His ways are perfect. By now, I had experienced enough to know that what seems right is usually the least fruitful path, and is often the road to failure. Throughout my journey, the path of the greatest risk was the path that led to the greatest reward. Even so, each time it seemed that more was at stake. Therefore, making the choice to go higher became even more difficult each time. I started to sympathize with those who would stop at some point on their sojourn and refuse to go on, even though I knew more than ever that this was a mistake. The only true security came from continually moving forward into the realms that required more faith, which meant more dependence on the Lord. Yes, it takes more faith to walk in the higher realms of the Spirit, the eagle added. The Lord gave us the road map to His kingdom when He said, "If you seek to save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it." These words alone can keep you on the path to the top of the mountain and lead you to victory in the great battle ahead. They will also help you stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Through the door. I knew it was time for me to go. I resolved to always remember the glory of this chamber that contained the treasures of salvation. But I also knew that I had to move beyond them. I had to go on. I turned, and with all the courage that I could muster, I opened the door to the judgment seat of Christ and stepped through into terrifying darkness. The company of angels that had been assigned to me took positions around the door, but did not enter. "What's the matter? Aren't you going to come with me?" I demanded. "Where you are going, you must go alone. We will be waiting for you on the other side." Without responding, I turned and started walking before I could change my mind. Somehow I knew that I should not put my security in the company of angels. As I walked into the darkness, I could hear the eagle's parting words. "After this, you will not have your trust in anyone else, even yourself, but only in the Lord." I was immediately in the most frightening darkness I had ever experienced. Each step became a terrible battle with fear. Soon I began to think that I had stepped into hell itself. Finally, I decided to retreat, but when I turned to go back, I could not see anything. The door was closed, and I could not even see where it was located. It was beginning to look as if everything I had gone through, everything that happened to me, and everything the eagles and the angels had told me had been a ruse to entrap me into this hell. I had been deceived. I cried to the Lord to forgive me and to help me. Immediately, I began to see Him on the cross. Just as when I had laid my hand on the red stone in the chamber I had just left. Again I beheld the darkness of his soul, as he stood alone, bearing the sin of the world. Although in the chamber this had been a terrible darkness to behold, now it was a light. I resolved that I must go on, fixing my mind on him. As I did, peace began to grow in my heart with each step, and it became easier than it had been just a few minutes earlier. Soon I was not even aware of the chilly darkness, and I started to see a dim light. Gradually it became glorious light. Then it became so wonderful, I felt that I was entering into heaven itself. The glory kept increasing as I walked along, and I wondered how anything this magnificent could have an entrance so dark and foreboding. Now I was enjoying every step. The Great Hall. The path soon opened into a hall so large that I did not think the earth itself could contain it. Its beauty could not even be described by any reference to human architecture. This exceeded the wonder of anything I had yet experienced, including the garden and the chamber that held the treasures of salvation. By now I was so overwhelmed with joy and beauty, even more than I had been overwhelmed by the darkness and fear just minutes before. I then understood that every time I had experienced great pain or darkness of soul, it had been followed by a much greater revelation of glory and peace. At the far end was the source of the glory that was emanating from everything else in the room. I knew it was the Lord himself, and though I had now seen him many times, I began to be a bit afraid as I walked towards him. However, this fear was a holy fear that was only magnified by the great joy and peace that I also felt. Not only was the judgment seat of Christ a source of more security than I had ever experienced, but at the same time it was the source of greater, more pure fear. I did not notice how great the distance was to the throne. It was so wonderful just to walk here that I did not care if it took me 1,000 years to get there. In earthly terms, it did take me quite a long time. In one sense, I felt that it was days, and in another, years. But somehow earthly time had no relevance here. My eyes were so fixed on the glory of the Lord that I walked a long time before I noticed that I was passing multitudes of people who were standing in ranks to my left. There were just as many to my right, but they were so far away that I could not see them until I reached the throne. As I looked at them, I had to stop. They were dazzling, more regal than anyone I had ever seen. Their countenance was captivating. Never had such peace and confidence graced human faces. Each one was beautiful beyond any earthly comparison. As I turned towards those who were close to me, they bowed in a greeting as though they recognized me. "How is it that you know me?" I asked, surprised at my own boldness to ask them a question. "You are one of the saints fighting in the last battle," a man close to me responded. "Everyone here knows you, as well as all those who are now fighting on earth. We are the saints who served the Lord in generations before you. We are the great cloud of witnesses who have been given the right to behold the last battle. We know all of you, and we see all you do." To my surprise, I recognized someone I had known on earth. He had been a faithful believer, but I did not think that he had ever done anything of significance. He was so unattractive physically on earth that it made him shy. Here he had the same features, but was somehow more handsome than any person I had ever known on earth. He stepped up to me with an assurance and dignity that I had never seen in him before, or in any man. "Heaven is much greater than we could have dreamed while on earth," he began. "This room is but thresholds of realms of glory that are far beyond our ability to comprehend. It is also true that the second death is much more terrible than we understood. Neither heaven nor hell were like we thought they were. If I had known on earth what I know here, I would not have lived the way I did. You are greatly blessed to have been able to come here before you die," he said, looking at my garments. I then looked at myself. I still had the old mantle of humility on, and the armor was still under it. I felt both foul and crude, standing before those who are so glorious. I began to think that I was in serious trouble if I was going to appear before the Lord like this. Like the eagle, my old acquaintance could understand my thoughts, and he responded to them. "Those who come here wearing that mantle have